Welcome to our Play Well podcast. My name is Sherry Morgan and I'm the Director of Projects at Play Scotland, the national organisation for play. Today, our Chief Executive Officer, Marguerite Hunter-Blair, speaks to Angelica Celinska. Angelica is an early childhood advocate, lecturer and founder of the Voice of Early Childhood. She has worked in practice across various settings and in different roles, before moving on to content creation aimed at enhancing training and development for both educators and parents. I hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Welcome to Play Scotland, Play Well podcast series. Today I have Angelica Celinska to speak to. Angelica is an early years childhood advocate, lecturer and founder of the Voice of Early Childhood. She has over 15 years experience in early childhood education. Welcome, Angelica, to Play Scotland's podcast.
Thank you for having me on. It's brilliant to be on a podcast and actually be a guest for once as well. It's quite different for me.
Yes, I believe you're normally in the chair asking the questions, so role reversal today. Angelica, you seem to have a renowned career in early childhood education. And I just wondered, if we started at the beginning, what was it that drew you into early years in particular? Was it someone that you knew in childhood? Was it an experience that you had growing up? Maybe a mentor in the education system? What drew you into early childhood education?
That's a really nice question to be asked, I guess, really making me reflect on the past. And actually, it's quite interesting. I just asked this question of my new students earlier this week around, reflecting on what made them choose the course they're on, early years course. And for me, it was, I guess, going back to my own childhood, maybe around 10 years old or a little bit younger. And from then, actually, I was looking after my younger brothers from a very young age. So my parents were very busy and very hardworking, and really trying to create a good future for myself and my siblings. And they were working very long hours and weekends and nights and all sorts of hours. So I was looking after my younger brothers from kind of as long as I can remember, really. And I always say, I guess I've almost been like their second mother, really. So I guess I always had that that nurturing side, and that instinct to look after younger ones, even though I haven't been a mother myself. So I guess that's where it all came from. And then I studied early years alongside going to full-time education. So I was in sixth form. As a teenager, I was also then going to college in the evenings. And that's something my mum encouraged me to do. And at the time I was like, oh, why am I doing this? Studying in the day and in the evenings as well. And it was just kind of like too much when other kind of teenagers were going out and, seeing each other. But actually I look back and I'm really grateful to her for kind of pushing me to do that, because it really boosted my early years career from very early on and gave me a lot of knowledge and experience from the get-go. So then that meant I was working or even volunteering before I could officially work in early years as a childminder assistant, then in various nurseries, in schools across Norfolk where I grew up. And then I moved to university and I was always working then as well alongside my studies in Leicestershire and then in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, so in the Midlands area. So lots of different roles, and then kind of really progressing to more roles that are around leadership and training staff. So I was a pedagogical lead, at which point I kind of felt like I'm really missing something. And that is when I stopped. I finished my studies, I finished my master's, and I was just really missing, I guess, now I kind of understand what it was. It was like an early years community, a bit like what I've built up now with the Voice of Early Childhood. I was really missing those deeper conversations. There was no time for that in the setting. It was so busy, and some of the people I worked with were not kind of keen to reflect and talk about early years. They were working in it all day, every day, whereas I kind of was from the beginning of my career always really focused on reflection and research and academia and just more early years. So I think at that point I almost kind of lost that spark I did have for early years, and I ended up leaving practice not really knowing what to do. And it didn't help that, like a lot of educators, burn out, so that's kind of where I was at. But that's when I completely transitioned to a different career, which is interesting.
That is so interesting, Angelica, because I've heard similar stories before, not the progression of yours, but the fact that people are so steeped in the practice that it does and can lead to burnout and a complete change in career direction, which is the right thing for some people. But sometimes I always think it's a big loss, given the experience they've built up. So you went on to found something called the Voice of Early Childhood, and I know it's coming up to the 2nd anniversary.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, certainly. So it's been quite a journey to get here, and the experience I had from working outside of settings in different organisations, stepping into the world of publishing and resourcing and content, all of those kinds of things now led me to set up the Voice of Early Childhood, which is a platform for really sharing voices of those in the early childhood community. And when I say community, I say that intentionally and not saying the early years sector or profession, because that the community involves parents and families as well who are not in the early years sector as their profession. So we involve everyone and anyone who has anything to do with early childhood, with young children, if they are working with young children, if they're interested or have their own children. So it's all about amplifying the voices of those within and beyond the early childhood community. And really at its heart, it's about creating space for open, honest and reflective dialogue. So whether that's through written articles, our podcast, or shared in-person experiences like conferences. So we really try and create that community feel. And what this kind of looks like practically, I guess, for people to really understand is we've got a weekly podcast, and every week we kind of speak to someone new. I guess a little bit like what you do as well. Really encouraging a space to create the open conversations about realities of working with young children, about research on early childhood, current issues, and we have, personal stories and professional insights are shared in that reflective way. And then each episode comes with an article as well, and that really gives the chance for people to access that content, good quality content from whether it's, shared experiences, lived experiences, or research and academics writing about their work. Access it for free and be able to reflect on it. So really building that almost like a bit of a knowledge hub as well as a community. And I guess the community aspect is important.
It just sounds so interesting. And I just wondered, what are the burning issues now? And are they the same burning issues that were maybe the case when you first set out 15 years ago? Or do you think they're different?
I guess, unfortunately, they are the same issues. And I think that's because it takes so much time to problem solve these issues, to solve them. Things like professionalism of the educators and the sector, and seeing early years as important as the rest of education, because unfortunately early years is still not seen as professionally as primary teaching or secondary. And I guess that really comes down to perhaps a misunderstanding of how important that those foundational years are, and also how important play is as well. I think play is a concept and a word that we all use in society, and often it's used in a way and understood in a way where it's a very simple thing and a very, I guess, in quotations, childish thing to do. So a lot of the time we may not give it that importance, that it needs, and understand that actually play is learning, and everybody has played as a child in one way or another, whether they were encouraged to or not. And that's how they've learned so many things, how they've developed their bodies, their brains. So I think seeing play as so much more than what we, I guess, as societies often see it. And that's kind of one of the biggest issues. And then if we see play as learning and really important, then that helps us to professionalize the sector as well. And therefore, once we are seen as professionals, and all the other issues can start to kind of unfold and maybe problem solve those as well, like the funding, lack of funding and things like that. So I think there's such deep rooted issues that for years they haven't been solved, unfortunately.
And I think that continues today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very heartening that you've got this platform that allows people to come together and discuss these issues and collectively help to make a difference. I'm wondering now about other matters like maybe risk and risky play, outdoor play. Have you seen a change in the trends over the years towards more risky and outdoor play?
I think perhaps it's a very interesting question, because perhaps generally in society there's less outdoor play and less risky play, because we are kind of living in a world where there are more worries about our children and adults that can harm children. All kinds of things happening in the world that are quite, terrifying for families and parents and educators. A lot of the time we say we can't let our children out to play without constantly, knowing where they are or seeing them, because there's all sorts of things that could happen that in the past, I don't know whether this is just more accepted, or maybe we didn't have as many horrible people in the world and all sorts of things happening, that we let our children play outside without even knowing where they are, and they came back home late. But now that's just not something that we do. I guess there are so many more risks out there. So kind of society-wise, I think children take less risks. And also, I don't really like to talk about technology in a negative way, because it has so many benefits. But I guess it has influenced a more of a sedentary lifestyle as well. So there's less of that outdoor and risky play. However, I do think in early childhood settings, we are more conscious of the fact that society is going in this direction. So we do need to provide children with more access to outdoors and risky play. So I think settings are trying harder to provide these opportunities for children to take risks, to manage their own risks, to make decisions for themselves, to problem solve, and really support children in building all of these vital skills, life skills, or soft skills, as we may call them. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a bit like when things, I guess I've never really reflected on this actually. I'm just thinking when things happen in society that may not be so positive, early childhood educators are like the superheroes that then fix that in their settings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's true. And I think it's such an important job. And you're right, we don't give it the due weighting that it should have. I know in my granddaughter's early years setting, they have fantastic access to outdoor forestry. They have home corners. They have, the building site. They've got lots of different play settings, and they focus on the different jobs that parents and grandparents and carers might have. And recently they introduced a laptop, because a lot of parents are on their laptops and they're trying to explain to their wee ones that they're working, that they're maybe not, doing some downtime with some social time. They're actually working. So I just think it is that balance, isn't it? It's a very fine balance, and it's about facilitating the curiosity and creativity of young children, but also trying to help them make sense of the world around them through play. It's incredibly important, and it's why it's so important that people like yourselves are providing support to these early years practitioners, because they have such an important role to play in child development. And I think to have that thing about a good childhood here and now, which is what we all want. We want children to have fun and help them make sense of the world around them. And it is, for me, it's a very serious business that I take it very seriously. But I suppose asking a different type of question now, going back to your own childhood, do you have a favourite play memory? Maybe with yourself or your siblings or your friends? Is there a particular moment you return to in your mind sometimes that was your favourite place to play?
Thank you for asking that question. Again, very reflective question. I guess whilst I kind of think of anything specific, I guess generally my head is full of like outdoor play and playing, whether it's just on kind of in front of the house on the street and there's kind of a little bit of green space and it's not really anything there's not kind of much there. It's just, a patch of grass. So I guess just that probably means that there's a lot of imaginative play going on there. Even though I can't remember like anything specific necessarily, I guess the point is that you don't need lots of things. You don't need resources, to play. And then other things that I remember is, again, outdoors, but even more so in nature, in forests, I remember a particular forest. It was in Norfolk, actually. I'd always play. My mum would take us, me and my brothers, and also when she was a childminder, taking the childminding children as well. And it was a very sandy forest. There was a lot of sand. It is strange because it wasn't, there was no kind of water around, although it's, 20 minutes drive from the beach. But lots of sand. So I guess just kind of exploring and experimenting, how that feels, not necessarily the traditional things of building sandcastles, but actually just really exploring different ways of moving in the sand, the textures. It's all very sensory, being really slowed down when you try to run in the sand, jumping in it and swinging from ropes. So things like that are very kind of natural childhood play, I'd say, and all about, like I keep saying, experimenting and exploring. And this is, I guess, what we often encourage our children to do, in early year settings, to freely explore. And they are my best memories of play. And they're not guided or led by adults at all. And I guess that also shows that there's so much, as we know, value in children leading their own play and really being truly invested in what they're doing, involved in a very present way. So I think that, again, being present, which is something I struggle to do now as an adult. I do remember being very present within my play, in my own play or with my brother's play or other, younger children. And I guess that's what child-led, child-initiated play allows children to do. And if we think about it, actually such a healthy thing to be able to do, such a healthy mindset and a healthy state to be in the present when you're playing. I think Tina Bruce often uses the term wallowing in play, really getting lost in play. I really love that.
And I've noticed it so much in my granddaughter. It's this complete absorption in the minutiae and detail of something that's actually to an adult very hard to work out what they're doing, but they're completely absorbed in it. And of course, the adult does that terrible thing, which I've done so many times, right? Okay, stop that. We're now going to have lunch, or now we're going to clear up, and you just come straight in and break through it. And you just don't realize how important it is and what's happening. Well, Angelica, I'm so interested in your career progression, and I'm wondering about young people today setting out on a career path. What would the 3 key messages you would give them about why this is an important career to consider and where it might take them?
Wow, again, I really love your questions. Again, really thought-provoking. Thank you for asking that. So I guess working in early childhood is, yes, of course, a really important career. It's a very important role to have as early as educator. There are lots of responsibilities. So I guess seeing it as, this is your chance to, I really like this kind of phrase that a lot of educators use, or academics, build the brains of children. We are kind of creating, supporting the future citizens, the future teachers, the future doctors, the future engineers. It's such an important role. It's building those foundations for life. And I think that's the way to see it. You're playing such a vital part in society, in these children's lives, in these families' lives. So seeing a career in early childhood as exactly that, it's such an important role you have. And I guess it's really a privilege to be able to hold that role. And you are essentially deciding what these children's life paths are going to be, and making decisions on what are they going to learn, what are they learning today, what are they learning next week. So that is a huge privilege, I think. And being really reflective of that is important, I'd say, because it's all around your own values. So I think I think I feel like I'm getting lost with all of these thoughts I'm having. It's such a big question. But yeah, I think number one is really seeing it as, it's a big responsibility and it's a privilege. And then secondly, also, this gives you the chance to build yourself as an educator and as a person as well, because like I just said, it's all about your own values. So what you choose to teach children, how you choose to teach them, that pedagogy, as we call it, teaching and learning, that really comes down to your own values as a human being and what's important to you. So I think it gives you the opportunity to do a very important role. It also gives you the opportunity to find out a little bit more about yourself as a person and build yourself up as well. And then probably thirdly, I would say is that there are actually so many different doors that working in early childhood could open for you. And I've really found that for myself as well. My career journey has been very fluid and different to many other people's, and very different to like that, I guess, traditional career journey of maybe working in kind of what I did at the beginning, a childminder assistant, and going into nurseries, schools, going into some leadership positions, working in different settings. And then many people stay in leadership, maybe they go into teaching. But I guess kind of accidentally, because of my own burnout, as I mentioned earlier, and just losing that spark, I actually went on to working for a resource company, and I was their first early years editor. It was TTS Resources, and that was very different for me. And as you can imagine, very different working in the nursery. And that really opened up my eyes to all the other opportunities where I can use my knowledge, skills, and experience that I've built up in early years and really put it into different areas, different industries, and still support children, families, and practitioners, but in a different way. Support them with how do we use resources in the best possible way? How do we ensure that the teacher is still the main educator and it's not the resource, but how do we supplement our provision? And also, going into training and continuous professional development, all of those things, and setting up things like the Voice of Early Childhood, setting up community spaces. So there's so much out there, and kind of like what I mentioned earlier as well with technology, there's so many opportunities in working for companies that support educators, support settings or schools with all sorts of day-to-day practices and routines, such as documenting children's learning. You may want to work in a company like that where you're supporting educators from more of a distance and not in practice with children, but actually you're influencing so many more educators and therefore children and families. So seeing it in that way as well. And I guess because you have so many opportunities, you can open so many doors, you won't necessarily feel like, oh, actually, I'm getting a bit bored now. And I don't think working in early years is boring because every day is so different, with the children. But if you feel like you've gone a few years working in practice and you think, I don't know where I want to be now, because actually everyone gets like that, whatever role, whatever industry, you can always still use that really, like I said, vital, important knowledge and those skills you can put them to good use in other industries and still impact practice. So you feel like you're still making a difference, just like, my first point around this is a really important job. I think you can make a difference whichever area of early childhood you choose to work in.
Thank you for those thoughts, Angelica. And I think one of the points you made there is something that we are struggling with in Scotland about when the difference between the early years setting and the school setting with play pedagogy and the educator staying in the lead in the education side of it and not the resource. So it's not just about letting children run about and play and just do what they like. It's much more complex than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you just hit on something really important that we are reflecting on at the moment and drawing out the difference in the role that the educator plays in the school setting, particularly mid-primary and upwards. And we do have a Play Pedagogy Award, which is a whole school approach to play-based learning. But the roles are interesting and different, and it is quite complex, I think, and incredibly important. So on a lighter note, so we don't go into all these very serious things at the end, Tell us what you're doing to celebrate the second anniversary of the Voice of Early Childhood. It sounds such a fantastic initiative that you set up. What are you doing to celebrate its second birthday?
Yeah, thank you. It's really exciting that it's been 2 years. There's been over 100 episodes, an episode every single week. And some weeks, I think we've had an extra episode here and there. So yeah, I think it's important to celebrate this, and also I want to be able to give more to the early childhood community as well for supporting the Voice of Early Childhood, simply by listening to the episodes and sharing them as well, and hopefully finding lots of value in the platform. And so one of the things we're doing is our usual weekly episode is actually going to be kind of switched around a little bit, flipping it on its head, where I'm not going to be the host, I'll be the guest, and that will be very different. We did do this last year as well, and to me it felt very different, just like this is as well. So really kind of going a little bit more into depth and problematizing power and positionality, and talking about giving voice, giving people a voice. And it really is quite a difficult topic. So really kind of trying to unpick that, and who people. I'm kind of going to almost kind of try and do, or this is a bit of a summary of the podcast, I guess, that's to come. People like, I guess, ourselves, both of us, we choose who to have on a podcast episode. And, whether it's every single week or not as often, for the Voice of Early Childhood, every single week, wow, that sounds like a lot. Actually, it's only 52 episodes. You think about it, 52 voices. That's not that many. So I feel like this is almost maybe too harsh to say, but in giving some people a voice, we're almost silencing other voices, or at least not giving them the opportunity. So I think it's just something important to reflect on and unpick, and to think about that a little bit more. And it just gives room for that deeper conversation and discussion. And it's exactly what the Voice of Early Childhood is about, those deeper reflections and discussions. And it's talking exactly about that topic that, that it's all built on, giving people a voice. So I think that's going to be a really interesting topic, both for those in practice and also academics and researchers who really like to unpick issues like this. So that's one of the things. Another thing we're doing across April, which is when we have our anniversary, is really encouraging all of our listeners, all of our community, and any new people to the community to share their favourite episode, share that with other people, share it with us, and really have more of a dialogue. We're always encouraging that, but we're kind of now in April, we're thinking, how do we push those boundaries even more and give more people a voice, even if they're not coming onto the podcast as a guest, like I mentioned earlier. Those are kind of like the two things in plans so far. And mainly really everything else would be around celebrating diverse voices in early childhood, whether that is educators, academics, students, families, parents, healthcare professionals, really celebrating their voice, their work, and their views as well.
We do one podcast a month, and we think we're doing really well. So I think you're absolutely putting us to shame.
Nice.
Because I think 52 voices a year is amazing. And I think it's just so insightful of you to try and think of other ways to give opportunity and voice to more people, really living up to the principles of the name of the Voice of Early Childhood. So it's just so fantastic. And thank you very much for taking your valuable time and sharing with us today about your journey and what you do. It's been an absolute joy listening to you speaking and sharing in your early childhood memories and the journey that you've been on that has taken you to the second anniversary of the Voice of Early Childhood. So please keep up the good work. I couldn't stress that enough. It is so important what you do. It's just absolutely fantastic, incredibly uplifting and vitally important. So don't think of even stopping anytime soon, but do take lots of time to play, because as you said earlier, if we don't do that, we can burn out as adults. And people like yourself have so much to offer now with your experience, wealth of experience. So please be playful, take the time to be playful. And thank you so much for coming on our podcast series today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marguerite, for having me on, for inviting me. And thank you so much for all of your thought-provoking questions. It's been brilliant to be a guest on the podcast. So yeah, I really value that.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your preferred app. To find out more about Play Scotland, please follow us on Blue Sky and visit our website at playscotland.org.